The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Hey guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 153. Got a great one for you today. Kurt Hester is the head strength coach at La Tech. He is one of a kind, great guy, tons of great stuff in this episode for you to take away. But the thing that's impressed me the most about Kurt through the years, and I've known him for quite some time now, is that he builds fantastic relationships with his athletes. I mean, those guys love him. And so we talk quite a bit about some of the strategies that he uses, some of the motivational tools. He's got tons of great takeaways there and just things that could be implemented into your program. And they've been successful for him in every step of his career along the way. And so just lots of great information in this episode. And I know you're going to get a ton out of it. Before we do, though, I want to make sure we recognize our sponsor, Sorinex, for the show. As you know, Sorinex Summer Strong is coming up in May, I think May 20th, if I'm not mistaken, and just a fantastic event. And you've heard me talk about the event on the show before. I think it is an experience. I don't think it's just a conference. I think it's something you have to go do. I am speaking on Sunday. Tons of great speakers at this year's event. Lots of former Iron Game Chalk Talk guests that were on the show that will be speaking as well. And looking at it as a reunion, man, I think it's just a phenomenal thing to be able to get together, get great people together from lots of different walks of life, not just the strength community, but the special operations community and groups like some Assembly Required that's adaptive athletes that are doing phenomenal things, and great business people and on and on and on. Olympians. It's just a fantastic deal. And so make sure you go to summerstrongexpo.com, sign up, register, make sure you take the trip. My whole staff will be there, and really, really excited about this year's Summer Strong. Also, Ask Coach Mack has been going really, really well. As always, I encourage you to leave your questions there. I do my best to try to pick out the ones that I think are going to be most fitting for the entire community. But Ask Coach Mack is a weekly podcast, short 10-minute podcast that you can listen to in the car, going into work, talking about a different discussion each week, a topic that you could go in and just create some great dialogue with your staff, with other strength coaches, and just to kind of get you thinking a little bit about some of the questions that different strength coaches have out there. So check that out. Ask Coach Mack. Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher so that you can get that each and every week. Leave your question at the bottom by just simply clicking Start Record and leaving your question at the bottom of the page right there from your computer. Make it really easy for you. And I know you're going to get a ton out of that. It's been a really, really fun project. But want to get to this episode with Kurt. Know you're going to get a ton out of it. Sit back and enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys. Excited to have Kurt Hester with us. I've known Kurt for a long time, going all the way back to probably D1 days or even before that, I think, and when you had your own play, your own deal. But man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and coming on the show, brother.
No problem, man. Glad to be here.
Kurt, kind of go through that journey real quick. Give us a little bit of Reader's Digest version and kind of how you got into it and what's led you there to La Tech.
Grew up in South Louisiana in the heat and the humidity. Started training when I was 12. It was back in around 1975. I bought my first 110-pound plastic weight set with the cement on the inside. Oh, yeah. I can remember the exact little pamphlet, the workout itself, all the exercises. Did it like incessantly 7 days a week. Didn't know what the hell I was doing. I kind of looked at, saw a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger, when I was a kid. I was like, that dude gets a lot of chicks. I want to be that big. And that was kind of my bodybuilding. Was kind of, that's what America had in the 70s and early 80s. It's all, that's what you relied on. Muscle and fitness magazines were barely out nationally at the time. My brothers were welders at a shipyard. And by the time I was 16, they had built, I had squat racks, dip racks, pull-up bars. I had 600 pounds of plates. I had dumbbells machined, all from barges. We were dismantling barges and just machining stuff for me out in the backyard. Right. And I actually had to lift with the welding gloves on because it's sitting out in the sun. You couldn't couldn't grab anything. And that, I really didn't know what I was doing. Then when I was a junior in high school, Gail Hatch spoke at my high school. I moved to Baton Rouge, and kind of introduction with him and Olympic lifting, kind of got away, and then kind of made my way back to him. And while I was interning and a grad assistant and assistant, I used to drive when I was at Tulane. I would drive to Baton Rouge and train 3 days a week with him as a GA. And I was living on the North Shore of New Orleans, so I'd drive across the lake to Tulane, work all day with the athletes, go to school, then drive to Baton Rouge, train at night, and then drive from Baton Rouge back to the North Shore. And I would do that 3 days a week. And then when I coached at LSU, which was even better, he was right down the road. Yeah. And I trained every day with him when I was at LSU. So, kind of went the ranks through intern, grad, GA, then assistant, then opened my own business on the North Shore where I trained probably 15,000 athletes over an 18-year span. I think we talked a couple of times when I was at LSU at baseball when you were at South Florida.
Yep.
We were winning national championships and gorilla ball and all that kind of stuff. And then moved to Nashville. I had a couple of athletes after Katrina that wanted. I kind of wrote the business plan for them for D1. Like, hey, come into business with us. Forget Louisiana; it's destroyed. Katrina just destroyed everything there.
Right.
Moved to Nashville. And we took D1 from 2 facilities to about 32 before I decided to come back to strength and conditioning at the college level, and just did it for 16 years, 18 years of building facilities and just got to the point where I wasn't doing what I was meant to do, and that's to develop athletes. And so got the opportunity to interview for this job, and it was like I love the violence of football. I love getting ready for football. I love every aspect of getting the body and the mind ready to play this game, and that's why I came back.
No, that's awesome, man. We've had Coach Hatch on, and I've been in his facility, the old conveyor belt platforms deal, the whole deal, man, and freaking awesome guy. But, well, man, you've done this for a long time. Along the way, you've made mistakes. I'm sure. What's maybe one of the biggest mistakes that you've made with your athletes, and kind of how you learned from that?
I mean, when I was young, it was arrogance.
Yeah.
I was an arrogant son of a bitch, man. I just thought I had all the answers. I mean, coming from Coach Hatch, and then when I was at Tulane, I was with Tom Shaw. Yep. So I had one of the best Olympic lifting coaches in the world, and I had one of the best speed football coaches, especially at that point in time when nobody was doing it.
Right.
And that's those two guys would elevate it to me where I'm at. I mean, without those two guys, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. But it was that arrogance where I thought I knew it all. I thought that there was only one way to train. That you had to do Olympic lifts, you had to do explosive stuff, and it was just that where I wasn't. It's kind of like in that era where Olympic guys fought against the high intensity guys that were up at like Penn State and Michigan State and Ohio State and Michigan at the time, or your powerlifting faction, and it's all training is great.
Right.
It takes a while to get out of that, that mindset that you think you have the answers. And the human body is, genetically, all athletes are completely different organisms. Yep. And there are certain things that one athlete's going to respond to that maybe 50 other guys won't respond to, and vice versa. And it's just knowing that and that arrogance of critiquing other programs and thinking that they were wrong. And it's like, people ask me to critique the program. I'm like, I don't do that. And they're like, why? And it's because I don't know your athletes. I don't know what you've subjected them to. I don't know your philosophy, what you're comfortable doing. So I can't tell you if you're doing right or wrong because I don't know your guys.
That's right.
I think that was my biggest. Once I overcame that, I became a strength coach.
So we always say on the show, you early on you know it all, and then as you get older, you just start to learn to ask the right questions.
Well, one of my interns, Wes Borlon, he said, you know what? When I got into this field, I realized I'm forever dumb.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, you're right, man. You never have enough time. I'm 53 now, man. I still train 6 days a week, and I read incessantly, and I wish I didn't have to sleep. I mean, I sleep like 3-4 hours a night, period. But I would losing 4 hours. I mean, that's time I could be getting better. And I wish I don't understand. My athletes, I don't understand smoking weed.
Right.
All this makes you tired.
Yeah.
Why would you want to get tired? I said, if I didn't think I'd be a crackhead, I'd want to go 100 miles an hour 24/7, man.
That's hilarious. Well, we were talking a little bit off camera, and you're doing quite a bit of research and reading right now, and about skill acquisition and where we're at as a let's talking specifically football, because you and I both, the passions are football. We're probably the only sport that doesn't have the skill training year round. We have to go in these gaps in time, and it really something that's bugged me, and I'm sure it's bugged you. Where do you see the strength and conditioning for the football player at the collegiate level going as we progress in this field?
I think we have a lot of really young, up and coming strength coaches. I think the Crimsies at Kennesaw State. I think Bouchel is it Bouchel at
Donnell.
Donnell. I think I watched some of their stuff. I don't know. I've met Chrissy at Georgia Tech Clinic before. Donnell, I don't even know, but I watch a lot of his stuff, and I love what he does. And I think Gritzy worked for him at one point in time. I mean, there are a lot of young guys who are doing some really innovative stuff out there. But I think that we're doing our athletes a disservice, because if you look at how many hours that a soccer player puts in from 5 years old to the MLS, or you look at tennis players or golfers or baseball players, how much hitting they do and pitching mechanic work they do year round. And you look at basketball players, how many shots they play year round, whereas football, we get a little bit in spring, and then we have the season. We have camp. And so we don't have a very high level of skill acquisition throughout the entire year. And so it's trying to develop skill acquisition inside of the training protocol. And a lot of that's just doing stuff, being innovative, doing stuff between sets, where your recovery is working on hand, if you're a D lineman, working on hand skills.
Yep.
If you're a receiver, working on ball, catching tennis balls with one patch on your, a patch on your left eye and switch over your right eye for depth perception, catching bricks, catching weighted balls, putting hand weights in your hands where you come up faster, catch a weighted ball, take the weights off, come up even quicker without a resist and release type method. I mean, just a lot of different things. Doing pass sets for offensive defensive linemen between sets, so that you're doing it year round. So that it's not like, okay, it's spring ball time. Let's go through some mat drills. Let's go do some skill stuff when we're dead tired, and then now we're going to spring football.
Agreed.
And they kind of do the same thing going into the fall, whereas they're not getting any. We worry so much about what our maxes are going to be and how fast can we get, and especially in the summer, this insane amount of conditioning to go to be able to match up with a spread offense, and it's trying to fit things in. It's like, and you have to start early, because if you're waiting to summer, there's so much other things that you have to get done to get a team mentally and physically ready. You're behind the eight ball. So we actually started in January implementing. It looks like our workouts are freaking 4 hours long, but they're not, because it's just you have A1, A2, B1, B2. Everything's mashed up, and it's a lot. It's labor intensive. Whereas some coaches are just lazy. They don't want to coach.
Right.
And our level, we rely on a ton of interns. I don't have one full-time staff employee.
Really?
Yeah, I'm the guy. It's like me in my old facility when I first started my old facility. where I was me and basically 3 interns from Southeastern Louisiana State, and we ran a program where we trained 500 athletes a day.
Wow.
So, I know you're big on education and educating your staff, and that's I have to live by that. I mean, I have to put a ton of time and effort. I have 4 paid interns, so I don't even have a GA. I have 4 paid interns. They get paid $1,000 a month, and which does help because if they screw up in school, I don't lose them.
Right.
And they get paid year round.
Sure.
And so even though the breaks, they're still getting paid. And then they basically go to school, their masters on their own time, and they don't have to take a full load. They can take 1 class at a time if they want to. The benefit is I get them longer.
Right.
So I'll have a guy for 3 years before he gets his masters. And so I'll put a year into them, and then, I have them for 2, and they're pretty good when they leave.
Right.
And that's all I have. So we just push it. I mean, we all have 2 to 3 platforms apiece. And the bad thing for me is that I don't get to move around.
Yeah.
I'm on 3 platforms. I don't move. So I really can't. I can only tell you what my guys are doing in that workout period.
Right.
And the coaches ask me, Kurt, how's my guy doing? I have no idea, Coach. He's on the other side of the weight room. And I've got to get to the point where my staff is that good to where I can slide back and forth and really work on the skill acquisition part. Whereas they're teaching the lifts or the sprint or the plyometric work or the speed work or our movement patterns, and I'm just working on everything else in between sets.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Well, you talked about the skill acquisition. You talked about your intern program and some other things. What do you think is the thing that makes your program the most unique? I mean, what are you doing differently than you think other people are doing?
Man, I think a lot of people look at what we're doing. Man, y'all, you get these crazy maxes, and you guys are just fly around the field, and you're violent as hell, and that's I preach that. I preach speed and violence more than anything else. And I preach getting better at your skill on your off hours. We're lucky, and a lot of it's not me. I mean, we're lucky that we're in Ruston, Louisiana. You look on a map. It's not even Louisiana to me. I mean, I'm from South Louisiana is Louisiana. Ruston's Arkansas. And it's 30 minutes from the border. I mean, there's a huge difference between being in the South and being from the North, and in mentality. And there's nothing to do. If you don't hunt or fish, there is absolutely nothing to do. So our athletes are up here 24/7, looking for stuff to do. So we have guys who are pissed off that they didn't get signed by LSU, Mississippi State, or Texas A&M, or Arkansas. So their work ethic is I kind of relate it to Army, Navy, or the Air Force. They train. Our DBs and receivers, where how typically in most D1 programs, those are the guys you can't stand them because all they do is talk. They just talk trash and they don't want to work. They don't want to lift.
Right.
They run out. They'll go to speed work. They love that, but you can't put them under a bar.
Right.
Our guys are opposite. That's our best group. They go balls out, and I have to pull them back.
Right.
So I think it's the way we recruit, the guys we get to come here. I think the fact that we can do more because they'll come 15, 20 minutes early. They stay 20 minutes late. They come back and watch film. They come back and do more skill work because of where we're at. I think it's not. I think if I went to, and then we're on the quarter system. So I think if I went to another school that was on the semester system, I would have a hard time transitioning because I'm so used to all these training weeks. Like we get off of spring ball, we have an entire month of training before we go to summer. So I had the entire month of May. We train 5 days a week, and then a week off, and then we start summer training.
Right.
So, I get whereas everybody's trying to get strong in the summer, I'm strong before I even get to the summer, and then I can really work on conditioning level and on skill work because the strength aspect is not that much that much of importance to me because we're already our numbers are already out the roof by then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think, just looking from the outside in, that I respect most about you and think that you're unique in is your relationship with your athletes. And you talk about them always being around, but I mean, just because they're around doesn't necessarily mean that they buy into you. How have you gone about building those kind of relationships with the athletes where they're going to run through a wall for you and then come back and pick up the pieces?
If you don't care about them, if you don't truly care about them, you're not getting anywhere. And the way we teach our athletes, everything that we do has a purpose. And we're telling them, this is what this does for you on the field. And we're one of the few schools that really preach. You know my background with the draft. I mean, I trained hundreds of guys for the NFL draft, and only a select few make it. Only a select few make it for any length of time. So we typically lead the nation every year with athletes with degrees who are on the field. Mm-hmm. We're in the top 3 every year, and typically we're number 1. Mainly because we're on that quarter system, and we have those guys loaded up to graduate their senior year. But we do a good job of knowing everything about our athletes personally, of being part of their lives on and off the field. I make it as fun, as grueling as this is, and I'm pretty demanding, especially when it comes to conditioning, especially when it comes to putting a bar on your back. I think putting a load on your shoulders, it's going to tell you who's going to quit and who's not going to quit pretty quick.
No question.
A lot of coaches think it's just conditioning. I said, no, man, put a bar on the back, and they'll tell you. And some guys will fold immediately. And,
right.
We do a good job of just caring about them, not just about their athletic career, them as a person, their family life, them finding out what they're passionate about. So when football is done, they have a goal set to where they're moving in a different direction. Where football is, there's afterlife, from football, and a lot of guys, they just don't see that far ahead. Right. I mean, a lot of them they didn't see as far as living as long as they've lived, much less what a career is. So I think from the standpoint that they know we care about them, and so they'll give back just as much as we give to them. And there are a lot of guys that get in this field are getting fired now because they just don't give a shit about their athletes. Right. They care about them moving up in the field. They care about them getting, TV time and them, being on different, on footballscoop.com, all this stuff. That's the one thing that I just don't care about. I don't care about the marketing of myself. I'm good at what I do. I care about my athletes, and if no one ever knows who Kurt Hester is, I'm more than fine with that.
Well, you see it in the back and on the board behind you, the why, the what, and the how. And I think when you get to their why and you care about them, and like you said, you explain to them why they're doing what they're doing. It's purposeful. Then that's all the inspiration you really need as an athlete, and that's you want to deal with the 21st century athlete. That's how you do it, I think. We got built-in reward. I mean, we do stuff reward system-wise as far as wristbands. With my favorite mottos, it's always been embrace the suck. It's hashtag on everything that I write because it's a Navy SEAL term about overcoming adversity, and they bought into that. We call it our just like their brotherhood. I trained a lot of SEALs in my time and Special Forces. And I got a couple of guys from SEALs Team Tenn from Louisiana that I trained as high school athletes, and got them to come down and work with the team and speak to the team, and they defined brotherhood to them. And it was probably one of those kind of moments in coaching where we're like, we've got something, we've got to put something together. It was like when I first got here, and we've developed that brotherhood. Even when we're recruiting, I said, look, man, you got to look at who you're playing with just as much as the school you're playing for. Right. We have a true brotherhood where our players care about each other. And when you get on the field with a team like that who cares about each other, they'll die for each other. They're not gonna let the guy down that's next to them. Agreed. Going into that a little bit further, you said you give wristbands. How do they earn a wristband?
We'll do in our workouts. We do daily competitions. Either during the workout, whether it's racks competing against racks or all the racks competing against each other, like squats. We'll do. Some of it's from a physiological standpoint doesn't make any sense, but it's a competition. We'll put 75% on the bar and say, okay, you got one set. We're going to add up the total weight of the athletes on that rack, and then how many reps, and divide it into it. And whoever wins either, it depends on if they've already had one win. We start with a bracelet, Then we go to dog tags. Then from dog tags, it goes to T-shirts. So it's kind of a system that works their way up. And, the more they compete, the higher level they compete, the more the more stuff they can attain. And also I have a bell in the weight room. It's like a Navy SEALs belt, but it's bigger. It's probably one of the most expensive things I've ever bought in this entire program. We built a rack for it. It has a brace to suck on it, and at any point in time in training, you want to quit, ring the bell. You're done. And they got hooks on the side. They have to take the shirt off, hang it on the hook, and head to the house.
Wow.
Now, that's a strong message. And I've had guys. I had one walk-on sit in front of it for an hour and a half. I thought I was going to have to pick him up and throw him into it. And I said, all right. Coach actually said this thing whenever you got in trouble as an athlete, when you're training for him, it's called a bucket eights. And it's 8 reps. And the bucket means you put a bucket on the platform because you're probably going to throw up in it. And it's just a system of, very little rest, escalating 8 reps, back squats, then moving to front squats, then going tempo. And it's an hour long, it's CrossFit times 10, times 10, and it's a nightmare. And I said, if you complete, 2 bucket eights, you don't have to ring the bell. And he got up at 6 a.m., walked in. Might have been the worst day of his life, but I was proud of him because he didn't quit. He wasn't gonna ring the bell, and he wasn't gonna quit. And so that was the closest we've had. And I think it just serves. When we bring it out on the field, like it's on a dolly, we roll it out to wherever we're training. It rolls with us, and it's just that reminder of. And the athletes buy into it. They're pushing guys. If someone even thought about it, the brotherhood wouldn't allow them to ring the bell.
Right. Yeah, you usually hear that now. I mean, and especially in today's society where now you flip the bell, it'll be only a positive thing with PRs and things like that.
Yep.
But you've maintained what the original bell was for, which was washing out of buds, with the SEALs, and I think that's great, man. Let's flip gears a little bit. You just went through a redesign and a building of a new facility. Talk about what you built tons of them with D1 and all that, but what did you find were some things that stood out to you in that process that other strength coaches would learn from?
Well, one is being at a mid-major, and you know how hard it is here. I had $350,000, and that was it. So build it. When you build, you have your own facility. You'll build anything. You're going to build it first before you're going to buy it. So I'm pretty good at building equipment, and I've always, and I've been good at. I've got. I think it's one thing I have is an eye for what's good training, what's bad training. I might not understand it, but I have a pretty good eye to understand, to go and research it. And it's kind of the same way with equipment. We had a limited space. We had only 8,500 square feet. One of the things, it's shaped like a flag, and it's like really narrow, so it's not on one side. And so all I could run was racks down, like 12 racks down one side, and they were half racks. I couldn't go doubles. And I needed, because of the heat, our facility you walk right onto the field. But in the summertime and, in certain times of year, that turf's 130 degrees down there. And you can't lay. I mean, I've had where the skin on my knees and my elbows from doing some mobility work just burnt off my body, just from teaching it 8 times a day. And so I needed a turf area in the field. So we've got, 40 yards of turf. It's only about 4 yards wide. But it's wide enough to where, especially during the season, during camp, we do a lot of yoga for recovery. And I put them to sleep. I try to shut that CNS down because they're going. I mean, we go through like junction boy stuff here sometimes. And it's like, the best thing I can do for them is to, go through 40 minutes of mobility and then 20 minutes of let them shut down and go to sleep.
Right.
So we use it, at that point in time. Then, all our plyometrics, all our mobility stuff is on the turf. And because it's so narrow, I built these with Sornex with these wall mounts that only come 1.5 foot off the wall. And they really didn't have a name for them. So I said, look, I'm calling mine the Doginator, because we're the Bulldogs. And so it's got Doginator written on the side. And what it has banded neck machines on each side. So instead of having, 6 big neck machines, I have 12 that don't take up any space at all.
Right.
I have a vertical Vertimax that you pull down and you can sprint out. You can do jumps, linear jumps. You can do vertical jumps. I've got all these modalities, soft tissue rollers that you can put on it. It's got stall bars for flexibility and where you can invert and decompress the spine and stretch. And then I have all these hand attachments that, from my martial arts background, it's a machine called Focus Master, and we just got the attachments and machined them to the racks, so I can put all these different attachments so we can really work some pretty good skill work on it.
Right. Well, that's what's great about obviously Sornex, and they're a sponsor of the show. We don't want to make it a commercial for them, but the creativity that it allows you to do, and being able to to create something and not be fixed from that one time. I've built 3 facilities, and that's what I've always walked away from being. I've always limited myself because of maybe the equipment that I've bought, and so I think with Sornex, that's fantastic. Being able to, you want to machine focus mitts onto it, you can. If you want to put a neck machine onto it, you can. A Raptor machine, you can. I think that's great. I know you did a great job there. That room looks awesome.
I designed it on napkins, drinking beer with Bert. Just, all right, this is kind of, what about this? I said, well, what about this? We just kept throwing ideas back and forth, and then we ended up with that thing on the wall. And man, we use one. It doesn't take up any space.
Right.
It's so multifaceted. And it just, as far as what I want to do as far as skill acquisition, and I still, and it can be improved upon. There's a lot of things. You look at stuff and you go, God, I wish I'd done this.
Right.
Or you see something else that you wish you would put in, and but with $350,000, when we customize plates, customize dumbbells, 14 half racks, 6 of the Frankenhypers, and then all your cardio. Your cardio equipment just kills you.
Right.
And then I didn't even want any. I said, we have a stadium right here, we have a field, but football coaches, they're like, you have cardio for them, not for mostly not for your athletes.
Yep.
Especially down here.
No, I agree with you, man. What was probably the like you said, there were some things that you would have done differently. From big picture things that something that maybe another strength coach can avoid if they're building a facility. What's one of those big things?
Well, big thing is be part of the planning of it. I can't. This thing was probably planned 50 years ago, and the original plan. So it's shaped like a flag, and so if you're on one side, you can't see around a corner.
Right.
And that's that I hate. I hate that if I have athletes on one side, I can't see them.
Right.
Especially where we're at, you have to monitor everybody. And it's not from a standpoint of I'm worried about that they're skipping reps. It's just I'm worried about from a technical standpoint. I don't worry about our guys skipping reps because I know they're gonna work their butts off. And it's from a technical standpoint where I like to be able to see. I can coach somebody from 80 yards.
Right.
My voice, the way it carries, and I see I see everything. And from that standpoint, be on that planning stage of designing it from ground up. I would probably my turf area. If you looked at Boise's, where it's in the middle,
yeah,
basically, and kind of like the Patriots and the Texans, and everything else goes around it. And I think I probably went more from that standpoint, where I could come out with those Vertimaxes, where I can really sprint out, 30 yards, because I'm going across the field, and I'm about 10 yards realistically.
Sure.
But you can go out 40 with them.
Yeah.
I really would. If I could go out 20, it would be awesome. If I had them, going down the field instead of across the field, but it didn't allow me to do that.
Yeah. Well, man, we end these episodes with some resources. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
Oh, man. God, I've been around a ton of guys, but I think from the mental standpoint, and it's not even advice, is when I spent so much time with Skip Bertman at LSU, and I spent a lot of time sitting in the dugout. And I wasn't a baseball player, but I was a fan of coaching,
right.
of coaching us, and just watching how he communicated with athletes throughout a game situation and what he would say to them, when different things were going on in the game, positive or negative, and how we handle losses and wins, going all the way through national championships. I probably learned more about human psychosis than any coach I've ever worked with. And that's where I realized it's the mental aspect of training should take almost a backseat to the physical, because you can get a lot done you can get more done with an athlete if you can tap into his brain and what makes him tick. How can you get him to elevate his game? More than, okay, I'm worried about the X and O's of our programming and our cycle as far as, squatting and cleaning and however we do things, just that middle aspect. I think, because I've seen coaches in my field when I was in the private field, and I had to hire so many guys, and there were already a bunch of coaches in D1 before I even got there. And I had to take all these coaches and teach them an entire new protocol and write all the protocol for it. And there were some guys that had a super high IQ, never really looked like they'd been under a bar in their life.
Right.
And trained, understood physiology, could not train or relate to an athlete. And then you had the opposite end of the spectrum of those guys that were, you could tell they trained, but they were just meatheads. But they had all this energy, and they would be doing some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen in my life. But all the athletes bought into it, and they're just going balls out.
Right.
So, I looked at it and said, you know what? We have to be a great strength coach, you have to be Einstein and The Rock.
Yeah.
Both. You have to put those personalities together and really, and on top of that, be a human and just care about the kid more than just what he can do for you on the football field and in the weight room. Care about mentoring him and helping him with his life.
Right.
Then you got a chance to be a damn good strength coach.
Absolutely. What about you're an avid reader? Give us one book, maybe inside strength and conditioning, and one outside of strength and conditioning, and then a website and an app.
I like Iceran's Building the Modern Athlete. I like all of Bondarchuk's books. And that's what where I got most of all my ideas about skill acquisition. From a website, I know Sean Mishko pretty well, and Movement Master. Sean does some really good stuff that we need to think more in lines of and movement prep on the field, because the bottom line, you got to move. You don't play in a vertical. You don't play in a vertical vector. And so you have to move. And I think he's doing some great stuff. I think that Inside, it's an Insider app. I got it on my phone. They just started it. The dudes from Old Dominion.
Yeah.
Insider training app. It's a great app. Because you're seeing what other college coaches are doing.
Yeah.
On a daily basis. So it's a pretty good app. This book sucks. This is the best book for. And I'm getting it for all my whole staff. Because
I appreciate that.
For the interns, they really don't know what they're getting into. And I think your book really defines what you're getting into as a young coach all the way through. And as far as, being a coach that's been there, it also looks at some management stuff that, Ron's got something there with I should rethink this and rethink this. And I think if you're trying to get in this field, that's a must read.
No, I appreciate that.
I love Jeff's book.
Yeah.
Jeff Connors. I read both your books simultaneously. It's I think Charlie Francis. It's a lot of stuff from Charlie Francis. It doesn't matter what book you read from Charlie Francis. I think he's one of the guys I'll look at. I think getting out to Altus, man, is with Dan Path and McMillan and all those guys, is you save your money and you go.
Yeah.
I think from a standpoint of from a nutrition standpoint, you got to look at John Berardi. You got to look at the ISSN and get their journals. And I think every strength coach needs a nutrition certification, especially at our level. We're everything.
Yep.
We have to do everything, so you better be well versed. I think young strength coaches need to look at almost getting into a niche, because I think that we're kind of moving to where we're going to build sports performance teams.
Agreed.
Where it's a conglomerate where we're going to have an ART guy, not an ART guy that's you go and get treatment. An ART guy that's standing next to you on the field,
right.
Look, okay, if I adjust him right now, he'll be in a better movement pattern, and then he's not going to get hurt while we're training.
Right.
Having EGOSCI specialists where we're working on joint stability and where we're doing things with a strength coach with an ART guy, an EGOSCU guy, a therapist who's got a strength and conditioning background, a guy who's just in charge of monitoring everything we're doing as far as research and testing. I mean, that's what buries me right now, is that it's just time. And I need an intern just to go through anything we're doing on force plates, anything that you're going to do on gym wear, anything that you're going to do with catapult. And because you just don't have time to sit there and go through every athlete, there's not enough time in the day. That's why I said I get mad that I have to sleep, because there's not, to be able to utilize. You can either get buried by it or you can utilize it. To do more. And, I look at FMS and I go, well, I don't need it because I've done this for 100 years. All I do is watch the kid move all day long, and I'm fixing stuff all day long. I don't need to run a test. But for a kid, a young strength coach who hasn't developed that eye, they need to understand that, and they need to understand the correctives to fix the things they see in movement. So, like I said, our field gets more complex, and either I don't see a whole lot of guys that are my age. I think me and Yoxel are like the only two left.
I hear you, man. Well, brother, I tell you what, man. You've been doing this for a long time, and you've been leading programs for a long time, and the way that you go about your business and the way that you do it is inspiring, man. And the passion and energy, combined with the genuine care for your athletes is phenomenal. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
I appreciate you, brother.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.